So should I get a forbearance? When is the right time to get a forbearance? Do I qualify for a forbearance? Will my bank even give me a forbearance? Why would I ever even get a forbearance? What is a forbearance? All right, these are all things that I'm going to talk about right now. You know, I'm sitting here in line at an event in Tustin, California, and so I figured I'd just take the time to cover this because I do get this question from time to time, and I'm not driving. I'm just sitting in a line, so don't worry. I'm not. There's no danger or anything like that. But uh, first of all, what is a forbearance? Right. Let's understand what that is. And basically, it's when the lender tells you on your mortgage. We're talking about in particularly in a case for a mortgage. We're not talking about vehicles or credit cards, although this, most likely applies to those as well, or other types of loans and things like that. But we're talking about a mortgage forbearance. And we're also not talking about what happened during the pandemic. Okay. That was crazy. People on these forbearances for, almost 2 years. That was nuts. And so we're not talking about that. Let's talk about the typical forbearance and what it is. So this is when the lender agrees. They say to you, hey, you know what? Look, you're behind on your payment, and this is at your request. You're behind on your payment, and because you're behind on your payment, you need a little bit of help. So we're not going to make you make your payment for a period of time, and usually that period of time is only 3 months. It's only 3 months. That's what's so typical with the banks. And now, not that they won't extend it, but it's only going to be 3 months at a time. That's why I say not pandemic era time frame with foreclosure. I mean with the moratoriums and all that stuff where forbearances went on endlessly. No, this is just 3 months at a time. They're going to give you these. They're going to give you or authorize these forbearances. So now you don't have to make a payment during that time. But there's some caveats here. First of all, the question comes up of what or when should I ask for a forbearance? And my take on when you should ask for a forbearance is if you're behind on mortgage payments and you can't make your payment. Okay, but before foreclosure filing has happened. Okay, and when I say before foreclosure filing, I don't mean before they start sending you nasty letters and threat letters and things like that. I'm talking about before, sorry, let me adjust this, before they start sending, or before they actually file the foreclosure. Because if you're behind on payments, the bank can still issue you a forbearance. But once they file the foreclosure documents, California, it's called a notice of trustee. I'm sorry, a notice of default. In other states, it's called the lis pendens, or basically, I guess the Latin term for, what is that, outstanding lawsuit or something like that. And so as long as those are not filed recorded, okay, then you can probably ask for a forbearance. But when should you ask for a forbearance? Yes, anytime you're behind on your payments, ask for a forbearance. But there's one thing that I deal with people on a regular basis, because we deal with people who are dealing with, pre-foreclosure or other distress situations where they just can't make their payments on time. And, and I have to explain to people, I say, you've got to get clear on the reality of the situation. Can you get a forbearance to extend your time in the house? Absolutely. And yes, take advantage of it for sure. But is it like the solution to stopping foreclosure? No. Unless you have something in place that says, hey, you know what? Within 3 to 6 months, I'm gonna be in a new job. I already know. I'm gonna be in a new job, or I have a large sum of money coming to me, or I have, there's other things that are going to happen that are going to help me to stay in my house. Okay. Um, Most people use a forbearance is just to prolong the inevitable, to prolong the pain and the suffering of going through a foreclosure, right? Because they'll get a forbearance and they know they can't ever make the payment again. They just know, right, that they can't, for whatever reason. They're so far behind, they'll never catch up, that they just drag it on and on and on until the foreclosure filing happens, and then they act shocked and surprised of, they're taking my home. Guys, you agreed to a mortgage. Look, I'm just aware and conscious of the whole, you know, lack of available housing that is out there. But when you buy a home, you agree to a mortgage, right? We all know this. You agree to the terms. If the terms say, hey, these are garbage terms, these are the worst terms in the whole wide world, and you sign the paper, you agreed to it, right? You agreed to it. And so if you get to that point where you're behind in your payments and you're going, well, shoot, should I get a forbearance? The answer is always yes, get a forbearance, but get into that mindset of the reality of the situation of, hey, am I going to be able to recover from being behind on my payments? And if so, fantastic and awesome. And God bless you. And God bless anybody who has been able or willing to help you. Because yeah, it's a tough battle. But if you're not, if you're kind of like, go, you know what? There's no way. There is just no way that I'm gonna be able to resume payments even when my forbearance comes to an end. Then you really need to just come to the conclusion that, hey, it's time to sell the house, right? And nobody wants to hear that. I understand that. Nobody wants to hear that, because not once ever in my 25 years of selling real estate have I ever heard anybody buy a house and say, you know what? Hey, I think I'm going to buy this house, but you know what? I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, I'm just going to let it go into foreclosure. Because, why not? Never, 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 never. Nobody ever, ever, ever said that. It's the same thing like with people who get divorced. I've never met anybody that when they get married, they go, you know what, we're going to get married, but, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we're just going to get divorced. So, but we're going to get married for now. No, the plan is never to get divorced. The plan is never to get in foreclosure, to get behind on payments. But circumstances put us in those situations sometimes. And man, we just got to deal with it, right? So think of a forbearance as a time frame for you to prepare to get your house sold. And it's critically important that you take this approach and not just let it go into foreclosure. I'll explain in just a minute. But let's talk about why. First of all, let me clarify a couple of things about forbearance. So when you call up the bank, you say, "Hey, I'm having trouble making my payment. Can can we do a forbearance? Can we postpone those payments for a certain period of time?" And they're almost always going to say, yeah, sure, not a problem. Let's postpone it for 3 months. Usually, and you have to talk to your bank and get it in writing of exactly what they're going to do for you with regard to a forbearance. Because usually the forbearance means that what they're going to do is they're going to take the payments that you're behind. Okay, they take the payments that are behind, and they just lump it all together and put it onto the back end of the loan. Okay, when they put it on the back end of the loan, now what they do is they say, okay, and they just keep doing that for every month that you're in forbearance. They just keep lumping it onto the back end of the loan. And so if you get, the first forbearance period for 3 months, and then you get a second and a third, now maybe 9 months. If you can stretch them out 9 months or a year, well, then you got special powers, because a lot of banks, from my perspective, from what I've been seeing, they're not doing that. But let's say you got 9 months worth of payments, right? And then they say, okay, your forbearance is coming to an end. you're going to have to start making payments. Okay, so now let's say your housing payment, let's just call it, $3,000 a month. I don't know, $5,000 a month, $7,000, whatever, depending on your situation, right? Let's say your mortgage payment is that. Well, what they have done is they've taken that 3, 6, 9 months, lumped it onto the back end of the loan, and when the forbearance ends, they're going to take that, they're going to add that money back into the loan balance and re-amortize that. So what they'll do is they'll figure out how to re-amortize that into the loan. So your forbearance comes to an end. Oh, okay, I'm back to work. I had some money come in. Things are kind of working out. Guess what? Now your payment is higher. Your payment just went up because, and sorry about the glare here, but I can't do anything about it. The payment just went up. So now if you've got a $5,000 a month mortgage, and they go, okay, you got to start making payments on your mortgage because the end date of your mortgage doesn't end. I mean, doesn't change. It's, if you've got 17 years left on your mortgage when you went into default, then you are then it's still 17 years, right? But now you've got this money that you didn't pay that gets added onto the mortgage, and so how do they recover that? They build it back into the loan and they'll re-amortize that. So now instead of having a $5,000 a month payment, you'll have a $5,200 a month payment, and you're going, well, shoot, wait a minute, I just, I busted my butt to get back into, recovery, if you will, and now I'm paying, more money that I couldn't afford before, but now I'm paying more money. What the heck? Right? So this is why I say you got to be aware of exactly what your strategy is going into forbearance. Are you going to stay and keep the house and read the terms? I talk to so many people, they go, I don't know, I just signed it, because they're in an urgent, desperate situation. They just say, you know what, look, I don't know, just give me a forbearance so I have a little reprieve over the next few months to stay in my house, right? But then they don't make any plans to figure out what the next step is, right? And it's just like, and then they're in scramble mode. So timeline in California for a foreclosure, just to give you an idea, is from start to finish, minimum 111 days, okay? So we're not talking about the timeline when they start sending you nasty letters and saying, you better pay, you're behind, blah, 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 and all this stuff. We're talking about from the time they record the notice of default. Okay, they record the notice of default. They have a minimum of 90 days before they can record the next step, which is called a notice of trustee sale. So 90 days on the notice of default. Now, I will tell you this from everything that I've seen, it's usually a little bit more than 90 days. Okay, it's it just kind of depends on the bank and all that stuff, right? So it'll go more than 90 days, and then they file the notice of trustee sale. Now the notice of trustee sale is 21 days, and what the notice of trustee sale does is it sets a sale date for the property. It sets that date, and that's usually pretty close to the 21-day period that document is intended to serve. It could be up to 30 days, or it depends on the schedule of the court and all this stuff where they're going to be doing the auction. So they'll coordinate. The trustee will coordinate with the courthouse or wherever the auction is happening, or whoever's facilitating that, and they'll say, okay, that's the next available date for us to get in. That's after the 21 days. Yep, great. They pick that date, and then the foreclosure happens, right? And now you've got the sheriff knocking at your door saying, hey, you got a few hours to get your stuff out. That's it, right? So you don't want to put yourself in that situation where you're scrambling, you're going, oh my gosh, my stuff is out on the front yard now because I hid my head in the sand. Okay, uh, it's just a bad thing to do. And people go, hey, well, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go if I sell my house? Where am I going to go? Well, you go figure out whatever it is that's within your means. And I know that kind of is like, that's not nice. I want a nice, fluffy answer to the question. The reality is you got to figure it out. Figure it out quick, figure it out fast, and make that plan to execute it, because hiding your head in the sand does not solve any problems. And nobody's going to come and rescue you. I'll tell you this, too. Politicians, they do all these programs, right? Like there's the camortgagerelief.org, right? Good program, right? They'll help you out if you're in poverty. The income limitations that they put on these programs, it's like, well, it only helps people who are in poverty who meet a certain income level. But here's the reality, is that I know that there's a lot of people that, they had a good job, they had a career, they had whatever, they lost their job, and now whatever money they have gets burned up fast and it's gone, and now they're sitting there going, what do I do? They're in just of a desperate situation as somebody who's who makes a lot less than them, right? Oh, well, they have a nice car. Yeah, they might have a nice car, but that thing's about to get repoed, in a month or two, or stuff. And I'm not trying to say that it's any better in one scenario or another. My point is that people have difficult situations that they have to deal with, right? So get the forbearance if you think it's going to help you, but make a plan to get your house sold. Now let me wrap this up here by sharing with you why you never, ever, 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 ever want the bank to take your property back. Never, right? First of all, we have to assume that most homeowners, if you bought a home, more than 2 years prior, you have some kind of equity. Usually, okay? Depending on where you're at, what state, what, city, whatever, what the area is like. But if you've had a home for a little while, you have equity, okay? A lot of people misunderstand what happens when a house goes into foreclosure. They hear things like, well, if there's any equity left when the house is sold by the bank, they have to give you that money. And technically, in most places, that is true. I've heard that there's a few places where they don't, but yeah, that doesn't sound right to me. But here's what happens. Let's say that your house is worth, let's call it $850,000. Okay, it's worth $850,000 as it stands right now in its current condition. Without getting repairs and all that stuff, just $850,000. Well, when the bank takes it back, and let's say that you owe $700, okay? Let's say you owe $700, but it's worth $850, so that's $150,000 in equity. If you go through the foreclosure process, you'll never see a penny of that, and I'm going to tell you why. Depending on which source you look at, it's estimated roughly that a foreclosure costs about $75,000. So a bank, all the fees they accrue, all the uh, charges that they charge, all the penalties they add on, their staff to handle it, their everything that they factor in, everything that it costs about $75,000. So okay, so you have $150,000 of equity. Well, there goes 75 of it right there, because they are going to take that out of the sale of the property. Okay, so okay, well, fine. I got $75,000. Well, I'll get that. No, you won't. And the reason is because the bank doesn't care anything about you getting a dime. They don't care about anything about you getting a dime. What they care about is they care about recovering their outstanding loan balance. That's it. Or whatever they can recover of that balance. And so again, if you owe 700 and you know, and it's worth 850, they're not selling it for 850. They're dumping it. They're just going to dump the property and say, there you go. Let's we just want our $700,000. So now they say that they sell it for, let's even say they sell it for 750. Well, once they figure, once you add in all the closing costs, and this is aside from their $75,000 and the back payments and all that stuff that they're going to tack on, but you figure in the closing costs, you figure in, sales, commissions and title fees, escrow fees, all that stuff. They're going to take that out of that, right? So now you've got no money, okay? And in the past, it was even a situation where if you owed $700,000, and let's say that they had to sell it for 600, that's the best that they could get for the time, just to sell it quick and move on. They took a loss of $100,000. In the past, they would send you a 1099 and consider that $100,000 of income to you. $100,000 of income to you. That's crazy. That is crazy, right? And I still hear stuff like that from time to time. But I think there's been tax code and stuff like that that's been put into place to say, nah, if you and I'm sorry, I think it still can happen on a foreclosure. On a short sale, I think is where they can't do that to you now, but that's something else to look into. So my point of all this is, don't let your house go into foreclosure. Do not let it go into foreclosure. Yes, use forbearance to stall the process, to put you in a situation where you can get the house sold and extract as much equity out of the property as you can. If you want to talk about that, you want to talk about the strategies, because there's a bunch of other things you can do in foreclosure, to postpone, to stall, to hold off, to recover, to get assistance and all that stuff. If you want to have a conversation about all that stuff, I would love to chat with you. Just go to ocforeclosureoptions.com. You're just going to come to a simple page with my calendar link on it. Schedule a call. Let's talk. I would love to do that. Help you out in any way that I can. And, get past the ugly. Move on to the next stage in your life. And just dust yourself off and keep going. Don't let this be a defining moment. I said I was going to wrap up, but I want to wrap up with this now. I deal with a lot of people who, they're so embarrassed, they're so afraid, they're so worried about the fact that they're in foreclosure, that they make some critical mistakes. One of them is not asking for help. And I know, a lot of times you'll go to friends and family are very limited as far as what they can do sometimes. But if you go to friends and family and say, hey, I need help, what can you do? Can you help out? Even if it's just a few bucks here and there to help offset other costs, right? But also take advantage of, if you're a member of a church, don't be prideful. There's the church's job is to help people who are in need. That is one of the jobs of the church, is to help people who are in need. And don't be afraid to go and ask, do they have like an emergency needs fund or something like that where they can help cover bills or make the mortgage payment or whatever. um, we all want to put on this air of, hey, everything's all just fine and I've got it all worked out and life is good and I got my stuff together. Yeah, bull. Nobody has their stuff together. I mean, you might, some people might have a what seems like a better life than somebody else, but nobody has their stuff together, right? So just take the pride out of it, take the emotion out of the whole thing. And I know it's hard to do and it's easy for me to say, but look, I've been where you've been. I've been there. I've had all the nasty letters come. I've had the notice of default filed and all that stuff. We ended up selling the house, and we actually made a really good profit off of it when we sold it. But we didn't get emotional about it. We just went, you know what? This is what we got to do. Okay, let's go on. Let's figure out what's next. At the very least, if I have enough money when I walk away from the house, I can rent something for a while until I get things back together, right? So anyway, okay, I think that's enough. I've kind of probably beat this to death. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.